fight for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What is up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm here with my co-host Ian Gibson. How are you, Ian?
Hey, I'm doing good. Crazy days of bowl games, man. I mean, Pop-Tart Bowl, when that's like the most normal game, you know you're having an insane season.
Yeah, I mean, that game wasn't even necessarily normal because there was a lot of intrigue into that game. But so what we're going to do, since this is obviously a little bit different than the normal schedule of how these shows go, because we have playoff games and we have bowl games going on at the same time. So what we'll do is we're just going to do two recaps of two of the teams that we covered as far as bowl games, and then we'll jump into the preview of the quarterfinals that are going to be on Tuesday and Wednesday. Right? Is it Tuesday and Wednesday?
New Year's Eve and New Year's Day.
New Year's Eve is Tuesday, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. So let's jump into the games we cover. We'll jump into USF first. It looked like USF was going to basically blow out San Jose State once they went up 21-7. They had that long kickoff return. And I thought, okay, this looks like, they're doing their thing. They were moving the ball pretty well and they were getting stops. And then all of a sudden, just San Jose State just came back and made it a game. And then San Jose State went up and it was like, oh crap, like USF's going to lose this game. And, the scenario where Golish had the decision of punting the ball back to them with very little time left was a tough decision, because it's like, if you punt the ball there, you may not get the ball back and the game's going to be over. So you have to rely on the fact that your defense can get a stop here. And they did. And they got the ball with like 50 seconds left or whatever. They got down the field, got into field goal position. And then Cannon, he ends up transferring after the game. But credit to him, because he made the kick when we needed him. And, it barely went in because it goes off the goalpost and goes in, but goes to overtime. We go back and forth for quite a bit because, the overtime is now kind of ridiculous. And we do get to the 2-point conversion part of overtime. And USF gets to the fifth overtime, gets their conversion, and then stops San Jose State. And it was at the time, it's ridiculous to say that, but at the time, the longest bowl game ever. And then 3 days later, I don't know what game it was, but it was 3 days later, there was a game that was longer. I think it went to 6 overtimes. But, huge win because, I know people are disappointed with this year. And it was a bit of a disappointment because I think we thought that they could go probably 8-4 with this schedule. It seemed likely that they could go 8-4, considering that they played Miami and Alabama. But no, I think USF made the most of it, considering that Byron Brown was out in 2/3 of the year. So they struggled with Archie. I know that they have lost Izzy Carter, and he's gone. He transferred out. But I think, from the looks of it, it looks like Byram is back for next year, because I think if he would have left, he would have already made plans to leave and would have mentioned that. I think he's pretty much locked in for next year. And, as much as it was a struggle, it could be a blessing, because one, Golish was really hot after last year. The groundswell was if he had another really good year, if they went 10-2 this year, he may have left. It may be, a good thing that they didn't have as much success this year, because it at least extends his tenure at USF at least another year. So, and honestly, the good thing is the closer we get to the stadium being built, the higher likelihood that Golish does stay. So, like, I don't know. I mean, at this point, it's I think you have to look at this season with like a grain of salt and just be like, it could have been a lot worse. They beat the teams that they needed to beat. They lost to better teams. They lost to Memphis. They lost to Tulane. They lost to Navy. They lost to Miami. They lost to Alabama. But the loss to Rice was probably the worst loss. I think that was the only one that I think everyone was really pissed off about. It was the last game of the year and no one was in the stadium and like whatever. And it's like kind of going through the motions at that point. But still, that game was very disappointing. But again, they came back and they win this game. They traveled 4,000 miles or whatever it was to get to Hawaii. And, they won the game. And now they got to win over a non-losing team. So a team with a winning record. It's the first time, I think, since Golish has been there that they've done that. And first time since, like, I can't even remember when. It's probably like 5 or 6 years since that has been a thing. So, I think with the recruiting classes they're getting, they've been like the best recruiting G5 team the last 2 years. They're putting in the infrastructure to really build a really good team. And, you see it with Florida. It's a very similar trajectory where the first 2 years didn't look that great. And even for Florida, this beginning of this third year was a rough start. But at the end of it, they really started to shine. And I really think that the depth that they had built and the player roster, which USF is doing, really started to like show through. Because, man, I know that there was some talent on the team when Jeff Scott was here, but considering how bad that Charlie Strong had built the team and then Jeff Scott really didn't do much as well, it really put the program in a huge deficit as far as depth pieces, backup pieces to really make a difference. Because, yeah, there are players, the starters are good, but like once you get past the starters, it's like guys that are just not very quality players. And, it makes a difference when you're playing good teams like Tulane and Memphis and Miami and Alabama. You're not going to be able to withstand it. I mean, in that Alabama game, it was clear, they got to the fourth quarter and they just fell apart. And I don't know. I'm excited for the future. Like, I think if anyone had told us while we were going through the Jeff Scott experience that we would get 2 7 and 6 years right in a row, I think everyone would have taken that. Like 2 bowl victories, like Miami has had 1 bowl victory in the last like 15 years. FSU went 2-10. Like, you got to take UCF is like 4-8 or whatever. So like you've got to take with what they have and appreciate what it is. And I know you like can't just say, oh, you can't complain, but it's like, I don't know. Some of the USF fans on Twitter are just over the top with it. And it's like, man, do you realize how far of a deficit that we were at to begin with to get now to where it's like, okay, this, like, honestly, next year, considering the schedule, what we have in front of us, it seems it's setting up very well for them to take a nice run. And I know there's still a tough game against Miami and some other games are going to be tough, but they should be able to be there. And if Byram's 100%, which he's been off for like a couple months anyways, and like he should be fully healthy. God, he should be ready to go by spring, I would hope. And even if not, he's probably ready by summer camp. So, the future's bright. I know it's a rough loss, that Rice game, but still getting 7 wins is huge. And, his 14 wins compared to Jeff Scott's, I think like 3 or 4, looks like amazing in comparison. So I think you have to like take everything in context and not just scream about this 1 year. But your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, this game, best way to describe it was like a Christmas miracle because it was on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
The USF, they were up 21-10, and then they just were, really not into it in the second half, and just flat out they got outplayed. They flat out got outplayed in the second half, and they kept keeping San Jose State in the game. And then they were down. And then they're like, oh, shoot, we got to like come back and try to, rally to make a game out of this. Credit to that. I mean, it was a gutsy decision to punt and rely on the defense, but the defense at least did its part in holding San Jose State when it mattered, which was key. But the offense was really sputtering. It did not have that same synergy it did in the first half, and that really, really hurt them because I said that game, there was about 6 times USF could have ended that game and put it away, especially in overtime, and they didn't. But not going to repeat everything you said, because everything I've thought about USF is in line with you. It's just good win. Again, it's kind of like it's moving up, but maybe not like the skyrocket trajectory that we were expecting or were hoping for more. They still went 7-6, back-to-back bowl wins. First time that's happened since Quentin Flowers and Marlon Mack were at USF in 2015 and 16. So there is progress still being made. Now, like I said, this season, you're going to have to start beating teams that, if you want to enter that, upper echelon of the American Conference, you're going to have to start beating teams like Tulane, Memphis, these good teams. To really, leapfrog them and be one of the toughest teams in the group of 5, which is what USF is trying to be. They got a ways to go, but the foundation is there. They just need to act on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a recency bias with like how we view things. I mean, we do that with everything. Like everybody does it. We're all guilty of like being like, oh, well, this is the best thing now. Like, especially with like movies and like different TV shows and stuff. We're like, oh, it's the greatest show of all time. And it's like, oh, if you actually like look at it from like a 14,000 feet view, you're like, oh, well, these things are why they are, and like whatever, this is better, and like I don't know. It's just it's one of those things that we're so like caught up in the moment on things, and I think if we just take a step back, us as fans, that we'll realize that there is a lot of progress here. Alex Golesh has completely changed. I remember him saying, I don't know if it was like the middle of last year, where he was talking about how guys didn't even know how to celebrate because they didn't win that much over those 3 years. So like they didn't even know how to like act. And he's like, they had to like tell them how to celebrate. And I'm like, God, that just to a T like points out like, it's just ridiculous. Actually, now looking at their out of conference schedule. Did you see this for 25? I think I remembered this, but I totally forgot. I knew that they were playing Florida and Miami. Yep. But guess who they're also playing? Boise State.
Oh boy.
I mean, at least that game's at home, but man, that is a tough game.
Yeah, and I think that's the first game of the year.
Yeah. Yikes. Oof. God, I hope they're ready for that. I don't know if they're going to be. But, Gentie's going to be gone, so I don't know how good Boise's going to be next year, because they're going to have to, like, kind of change their makeup a little bit. But their quarterback is pretty good for Boise State, and I think he's back. But Dirk Cutter is their offensive coordinator, and you remember him with the Bucks. Like, he's really good. So, like, I expect them to still be good offensively next year. So the defense, that honestly, out of everything with USF, I think they just need to really focus on getting the defense better. Because like that is something where, if you notice, like, and I try to mirror it as much as I can with like my like expectations of USF with Tennessee. Because like Tennessee, the way that they've like, incorporated a good defense with their offense has been kind of important, because their defense is stout. Like Tennessee's defense is one of the best defenses in the country. They didn't play great against Ohio State, but I think that was largely to do with the offense just struggling mightily. I think if the offense had just been kind of like decent in that game, not even great, just decent, that they would have like been able to get off the field and make more stops. And because Tennessee was like, basically punting to them almost every other couple of plays instead of having long drives. They were just like boop, punt quick, and the defense was out to dry because of that. But I just feel like if the defense can take another step, that this team might be able to get to that next level. And I think that's the one big thing that's holding them back. And I think going forward, I think that if they can focus on that, I know Todd Orlando's been there now a couple of years. It seemed to be better at points this year. But again, we need to see it against big time opponents. So let's move on to USC real quick. I watched the first half of this game, and then I didn't get to watch the second half, which I wish I would have, because the second half was the better part of this game because it exploded for was it not 28 but 24.
SC scored like 28, and
SC scored 28 and
A&M scored
24. So yeah, like ton of points in the second half. And Mayava, like 3 interceptions again. I mean, he's been very not great at ball security. So he needs to be better with that. He needs to take care of the ball better. But he did have 4 touchdowns, and he had 295 yards. Marcel Reed for A&M had a pretty good game as well. I don't know what to make of this USC team because, again, this was another one-score game. They have just put themselves in this position all year long, literally from beginning to end. They were in Vegas the first game. They're in Vegas the last game. And, throughout the whole season, it was nothing but one-score games. And, they survived like 4 of them, but they lost a good amount of them. So it's like, you got to get to the point where you're not in this position where you can at least have like a 2-score cushion to I don't know. It's just they've kind of just played down the competition in some of these games. And then they've also just I don't know, offense has been a struggle at points. And then defense, I think, has done tremendous. I think that has been the bright spot of the whole year, is that the fact that the defense has done so well. They had a lot of guys that were transferred out, so they didn't have their full squad throughout the year. But Jacoby Lane, receiver, had a really good game, 127 yards, 3 TDs. Kyle Ford had that touchdown at the end. It was 8 seconds left, and they won it. Just a kind of crazy game. I wish I had watched this because, USC was losing 24-7, and then, put it on them. A&M came back, went ahead. Just a great game. I don't even know why I didn't even record it. It's the holidays, so there's a million things going on. So, but great season for them as far as bouncing back at the end after the benching of Miller Moss. So I think, Miller Moss might have been the problem there because he was throwing a lot of interceptions as well. But Mayava, the great thing about him is the fact that he is more mobile and more active in the run game. So that is more conducive to what Lincoln Riley tries to do with his offense. So hopefully, Mayava into next year is the piece that they need, and they can focus on him. They can, put him through spring and summer camp, and we'll see him come through into the fall. It's another hard schedule because the Big Ten is a really difficult schedule, plus Notre Dame. So, buckle up, USC. It's going to be another tough year. But if Mayava does make the jump into next year, maybe we'll see a jump for USC as well. Your thoughts on this, Ian?
Yeah, so this was the equivalent of an arena football game in Vegas. And I'm kind of the opinion that USC just needs to play in Vegas right now because 2 of their wins were obviously against LSU and A&M, both in very similar, burnout fashions. A&M, it's really tough because they had a 17-point lead And to have that slip away, you just can't do that, especially with a team like SC, where as good as they were on defense, if you have them at 17 and with Maeva throwing 3 interceptions, you should have them in that game. And they just couldn't. They dominated time of possession. They forced more turnovers and they still let that game slip away. That's where you can see talent winning over everything else. So I think with that one, this bowl game was really more like SC was just more talented, had more athletes than A&M right now to really stop them. There was more speed over skill at that point. And Maeva, like you said, there's a lot of potential here. Kind of the same thing we said about Miller Moss last year in his bowl game performance. So we're getting some serious parallels here. But I would say, it's a good way to end the season for SC. It's a tough one for A&M because they had that game won and they just could not get a stop when it counted. But anyways, SC still finishes with a winning record to end the year.
Yeah, and it's definitely to now. It seemed like I think they were all the teams that we covered at one point were 4-5. So for them to go 7-6, to go 3-1 to finish off the year, and that one honestly was against Notre Dame, and they were in that game almost to the very end. They had those like 2 pick sixes. If they didn't throw those pick sixes, the game's probably a lot closer. So, it wasn't that far off for USC to be not only 7-6, but maybe even 8-5, and with a win against Notre Dame, which had been huge because that would have knocked Notre Dame out of the playoff picture. So let's move on to the playoff game. So we're going to get into the quarterfinal college football playoff quarterfinals preview here. So the first game we have is Boise State and Penn State on Tuesday, which is,
the
Fiesta Bowl in Arizona. I did like a bunch of pulled a bunch of stats from all these, and some of the things that stand out as far as some of these teams is like red zone scoring and red zone defense. Because I noticed in those games with SMU and with Indiana that those teams struggled to score when they got inside the red zone. And you cannot do that in playoff games. You have to capitalize. And I think that is something that, it is an art, because it's like a lot of people can call plays from the inside the 20s, so 20 to 20. But when you get inside the 20, you have to be very skilled at that, because you're limited in space and you don't have the luxury of running people all over the place. You have to really take advantage of your players and the advantage you have on the other team regarding their weaknesses. And so Boise State is the 30th best red zone scoring team. And then as far as Penn State on defense, Penn State is the 11th best. And they showed that in the SMU game. They really locked down when SMU got close. I think they only allowed 1 touchdown. And, as far as Boise State's red zone scoring for defense, they're 14th. So that's something there to I don't know what SMU's was as far as, but the other thing was Penn State, once they got down, they were capitalizing on drives with Nick Singleton and what's the other guy's name? The other running back.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. The other, it's Singleton, and I can't remember the other guy's name, but they capitalized on those drives and punched them in for scores. And Penn State's red zone scoring is 35th. So maybe it was because SMU's red zone scoring was not that great, the red zone scoring defense. So Penn State was able to take advantage. Maybe here with Boise State, there's a chance here that they can actually take advantage of that. And the other thing I noticed with this game Penn State doesn't throw the ball a ton. They're definitely more of a running team on offense. And obviously Penn State's defense is very good. They've been, their stats are through the roof on all of them on defense. But I will say their takeaway numbers are pretty low. They're like 59th in the country as far as takeaways. But they also on offense, Penn State doesn't give the ball up as much, which that's huge because on defense, Boise State is 113th in interceptions, so they don't take the ball away as much, and Penn State doesn't give the ball up as much either. So that might be a difference there, the turnover battle. So if Penn State has an advantage there, I will say I didn't realize this. Boise State has the third best sack percentage of any team, which that is really good considering their numbers are like not amazing outside of that. Their passing defense is 113th, so not very good, but their rushing defense for Boise State is really good, 13th. So I think in this game that Boise's going to be able to run the ball. Obviously, Genty is a freak, and I've been big on him all year. Should have won the Heisman. But the key though is yes, they'll be able to run the ball, but does their quarterback, Boise State's quarterback, does he be able to make enough plays? He doesn't throw the ball a ton, throw interceptions a ton. They're the second best in the country at interceptions thrown, so they've done well there. Passing yards number, they're 74th, so not very good, but I feel like they can do the things necessary when they have the ball on offense to be able to control the game, time of possession, keep the ball away from Penn State, and their defense can do enough to be able to stop Alar and Singleton and all those guys and the tight end Warren. And it's going to be close. I mean, I think this game is going to – the spread is like whatever. I know it's like double digits, but it's like I don't feel like this is a double-digit spread game. I feel like it's deceptive. I think maybe they were like trying to get Penn State money on this game, and so they like put it up higher to make people to like bet it down. But regardless, I feel like Boise State's going to make this a game. And if Genty goes off, like Genty's going to put up huge numbers, and I'm thinking like 180, 200 range, maybe 2 TDs. But I want to hear your thoughts, and then I'll give my prediction.
Yeah, so the thing, doing the homework on this one, there's been a lot of black magic with these teams involving the Fiesta Bowl because both are undefeated in Fiesta Bowl history. Boise State is 3-0. Their last appearance was in 2014, but we all remember, the big one was the two before that. Obviously, 2007, the Statue of Liberty play, beating Oklahoma, and then 2010, which was pretty much the white flag of the BCS, where it was TCU in the Mountain West and Boise State in the WAC, who were both undefeated, but they were given the Fiesta Bowl. Yeah. So if you want an antithesis of like how bad the BCS was, that would be it. Yeah. But Penn State famously was in the first ever big when the Fiesta Bowl became part of the New Year's Six rotation in 1986, beating Miami for the national championship, and they've been a perfect 7-0 since. So somebody's undefeated streak in Arizona is going to end. In this one, it is going to depend. We know Boise State is going to run the ball with Genty, and Genty is a monster in the trenches. The difference here is, though, I agree with you that I actually think it's going to come down to who plays better on the air, Madsen or Alar, because both these teams, it's run, then pass. Boise State's defense is going to have to do a good job in the secondary trying to stop Alar on the speed there, but it's not like deep balls. It's going to have to be these drag rats and bubble screens they're going to have to stop, which they haven't played a team like Penn State like that before. Same thing can be said on defense. Penn State has the number 7 defense in the country right now, and they're in the top 3 against the run in the Big Ten. So it's going to come down to how many yards can Genty get to maybe make it second, third down and manageable. I think the way these two teams are going to play is not hit a home run every play, just, nickel and diamond. If you can get 4 yards a play and then make it 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 1, you're winning the game there, because I don't think either of them are going to budge. I will say, though, when it comes down to it, if I had to make a pick, I would feel more comfortable with Penn State's defense stopping Boise State, because we saw with SMU that SMU can't really, with Jennings, that was like their main catalyst. And if you take away, the engine of that offense, they're dead in the water. That's going to be their goal, is to stop Genty, stop the engine, and get it from there. And I think Penn State can do that. I think Boise State, keeps it a game, but I think Penn State could pull it out. I'm going to go Nittany Lions winning. I'll go with a 27-21 win for Penn State.
Yeah, and I'm like, going back and forth right now, thinking about like if I should pick Boise State. It's all going to depend on if, because in games past, they have loaded the box against Genty and he's still gotten yards. So I still feel like what has to happen, even if Penn State kind of loads up the box, is Madsen has to take advantage of those situations. And if he can get play action pass, or, if he audibles out of the call from a run to a pass, he's got to be able to take advantage of them stacking the box, because if he doesn't, then it's going to hurt. But I don't know. Like I said, Genty's been able to run on heavy boxes. So I know this would be a huge upset, but I've never been sold on James Franklin. And we haven't even brought that up yet. Like, James Franklin has been the big game antithesis coach. He just cannot coach in big games. And I think he got lucky that his matchup was SMU. If it was any other team, I think they probably lose that game. If it was Tennessee, I don't think they beat Tennessee. If it was Indiana, I don't think they beat Indiana. And it might even been, if it was Clemson, they probably would have lost to Clemson. I just don't think James Franklin has what it takes to win big games. And, I think this is one of them. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to say this is my upset here, because I don't know if I'm going to do any other upsets the rest of these games. But I'm going to say Boise State wins. Like, let's go 29-24. And I'm going to say, like, what happens is Boise State has the ball late, and they're down by like a couple, and Genty just runs right through them and goes down the field with like 5 minutes left, and Boise State gets the score late, and they win it. So, all right, let's move on to the next one, which is, it'll be on New Year's Day, and that's going to be Arizona State and Texas in the Chick-fil-A Bowl in Atlanta. So this game's at 1:00 Eastern. Why don't you do your thoughts, and then I'll do my rundown after you do yours.
This is a trap game of trap games right now for Texas, because Arizona State, we've seen it in this season. They're 11-2, but they won the Big 12, and their losses were to Tech and a really bad one to Cincinnati. But when they are on, they are on. And that's going to be, they really have shown up in big games, and that's the thing. They showed up when Utah was ranked. They beat them there. When they played Mississippi State, had to, play an SEC team, beat them there. And I know Mississippi State wasn't that good. Kansas beat Kansas in a close one, beat K-State and BYU in back-to-back weeks. And then in rivalry week, blew out Arizona and then blew out Iowa State. This is definitely the hottest team going into the playoff right now. And for Texas, This is going to be interesting because they did quick work of Clemson. They just cannot go into this game. Again, Texas is their own worst enemy this season. I don't feel like there's been a team or a game that they were beaten. They just beat themselves. Both of those Georgia games, they were their own worst enemy.
Yeah.
So Arizona State, they're masters of chaos here. It's going to be crucial for, Texas to limit penalties and to make sure that whatever they do is to limit turnovers as well. Do not give Arizona State any momentum in this game, because that is exactly what they are going to be, wanting to ride on. Obviously, Arizona State, they're going to be relying on Scatabo on the ground, but let's not take away Levitt and his main connection of Tyson for the Sun Devils has been really electric. Levitt has over 20 touchdowns and half as many interceptions as Quinn Ewers, actually. He's only thrown 5 picks, so the decision-making has been fantastic there for Levitt.
Yeah.
So I think with this one, I say all that, but I feel like, again, if Texas just plays their game, which we saw them play, I mean, they got off slow in the first quarter, but if they just play their game for the whole 60 minutes and they don't give Arizona State many opportunities, because we know Sun Devils are an opportunistic team, Texas can take care of business. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk like it was with Clemson, or at least, in the first half, because Clemson did come back. And that's, again, the thing. You just keep your foot on the pedal. And because this is the playoffs, man, you're not playing, a layup game now. So with that, I feel like with yours in the passing game, along with, Blue and Windsor on the run, I feel like there's more options for Texas to score and make big plays that compared to Arizona State. So I'm going to go Texas winning. I'll go with let's go 30-20 win for the Longhorns.
So with the stats that I was looking at, red zone scoring for both of these teams is quite stark, because Arizona State, as far as red zone scoring for both their offense and defense, terrible. Offense for red zone scoring for Arizona State, 114th out of 132 schools, I believe. And then red zone scoring for their defense, 76. So they're obviously very bad at capitalizing drives inside the 20 and then stopping teams from scoring inside the 20. But conversely, Texas on offense is really bad at red zone scoring as well. They're 104th. So that could be a play there. But the thing that is in favor for Texas, they're the third best red zone scoring defense in the entire country, which is really good. So, and then as far as defense, Texas is just top notch. Second in the country in scoring with 13.3. They're excellent on third and fourth downs. Fifth in the country on third downs. Rushing yards, they only allow 104.5 a game, ninth in the country. Passing yards per game, they only allow 156.9, second in the country. They have the second most amount of interceptions on defense. They're the 12th best defense as far as getting sacks and takeaways in general, including fumbles. They're the 8th best team as far as takeaways. So they average 2.1 turnovers per game, which is a huge factor in this game, I think, getting takeaways. As far as Arizona State, their numbers do not look good. The passing wise, they're the 63rd best team in the country. They run the ball extremely well. And I will say they're the 14th best in the country at third down conversions, which could be huge because they need to be able to move the ball against Texas. They're the 95th worst in penalties, which might come into play, but then Texas is just as bad. They're 85th, so they're both pretty bad at getting penalties. Scoring defense for Arizona State, they're 21st, so not terrible, but they're pretty bad on getting stops on third down. Their rush defense is better than their pass defense, so expect Arizona State to be able to take advantage of their run game and to stop that. but I think Quinn Ewers is going to have a big game here. I think with all this, their sack percentage is low as well. They're 122nd in the country, so one of the worst teams in the country about getting sacks, and 35th in getting interceptions. So about roughly a good to average team about getting interceptions. So I think that Ewers is going to have a big day. I think he's going to be able to put up a ton of numbers. He's going to be able to move the ball through the air, and they won't have to rely on the run game as much. And with that being said, expect like a turnover or two here for one of these teams. And I'm thinking that Arizona State's going to have like 3 turnovers, and then Texas should win. I'm going to say they're probably going to win like 34 to like 20. Okay, let's move on to next game is the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. And it is a traditional Big Ten Pac-12 game, but just now both of these teams are in the Big Ten. So Oregon going up against Ohio State, a rematch of probably the best game so far this year. And that was in Eugene. So now we get a neutral site between these two. I like Oregon a lot in this game. I think Oregon is the best team in the country. But I want to hear your thoughts, Ian, before I do a breakdown. Go ahead. I can't hear you.
Sorry. We know Oregon is number one, and for good reason this year. They've had a fantastic season. They're trying to, shed the label of being, good, but not good enough. But the offense and defense especially have been second to none this year, especially within the Big Ten. And I mean, that's really going to be the point of emphasis we're looking at here. Now, Ohio State, historically with these two teams in bowl games, they played in the first ever playoff national championship. They won that one. And then again in and then I think the last Rose Bowl they played, it was 2010. They lost, Ohio State beat Oregon in that one.
Yeah.
Very different circumstances now. I mean, it's going to be interesting now. Ohio State is still a lot of expectations are on them because they, need to have a deep run and need to go to the semifinal to really justify, just losing to Michigan still. But they were in that game with Oregon. They were very well within striking distance of beating Oregon, and they
should have won. They should have won. They were in position to kick a field goal to win it.
And I think with that, if Oregon is playing the type of game that they have kind of fallen into, where they will, they've had close games with teams they should not be close with. As undefeated as they are, they have been making it way closer than it needs to be. The one thing to note here is that Oregon, as good as they are, is still very solid defense, but they're in, I believe it was 6th place in the Big Ten. Ohio State is the best defense in the country and in the Big Ten. Meanwhile, Oregon does have the best offense in both the country and in the Big Ten. So it's really, unstoppable force meets immovable object again. I feel like with this one, because it's in the Rose Bowl, it's at a neutral site, I feel like this favors Ohio State more. I feel like in bowl games, I usually will take a defense over an offense. Yeah. Because if they can find a way to, have good coverages on, Gabriel and just really force Oregon to try to run the ball, which they are just as effective as running the ball, but their bread and butter is passing, or maybe force some, low percentage passes. I feel like Ohio State's got them there because Ohio State's defense has still played incredibly well. It's their offense that needs to play better. And they showed how good they can be against Tennessee. Now they got to do it again against an even bigger and tougher opponent again at Oregon. So I feel like with this one, I'm going to take the Buckeyes because I feel like that defense is going to find a way to get enough stops, and they're not going to waste an opportunity to, drive Oregon into the ground like they did last time. I'm going to take Ohio State winning a close one. I'll go with let's go 34-31 win for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the stats now, and it's really, really close, both of these teams. So the only difference I'm really seeing is red zone scoring for these defenses, which Oregon is 95th and Ohio State is first. And you saw that in the Michigan game. Ohio State, was able to stop Michigan close, and they've done it all year. They've been really great at red zone defense. And the only other difference, because they're the same in red zone offensive scoring, they're both 50th. And then, their stats are very similar, like as far as everything else. The only other thing I will say is that Will Howard is more turnover prone. He's thrown more interceptions. They're 51st in the country in throwing interceptions. And I think that actually, as far as, Ohio State might be able to stop them in the red zone. And then the thing that might go in favor for Oregon is that Will Howard might throw an interception or two to make the difference here in the game. So I'm with you. This is very close. Like these teams, I wish this was a semifinal game, and it sucks that we get this in a quarterfinal. But it's just the way the playoff breaks. I think Oregon is still the best team in the country. I really feel like that. I like Ohio State a ton. They have a ton of talent. Jeremiah Smith is a freak. He is the best freshman wide receiver I think we may have ever seen. And Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson are amazing 1-2 punch in the backfield for Ohio State. Oregon has a bevy of playmakers. Johnson, Stewart, Dylan Gabriel is amazing. Their defense really solid. I think if all being equal, I think it's going to be Howard's turnovers. I really think it. Like looking at the stats, I'm looking what can be the narrative here. I think that Oregon is good enough to be able to force some turnovers, but they're 83rd at takeaways. So maybe they are not good enough to be able to force the turnovers there, even though Will Howard could provide them. The other thing real quick on that, sack percentage, they're both very strong, both defenses, but Ohio State is second best in the country. So, God, I don't know what to think. I want to pick Oregon. I really do. Like, I think Ohio State can win, but I feel like Oregon is just a better team. And with having that time off, maybe they're well rested. God, yeah, I'm going to say Oregon, and barely. I'm going to say it's going to be just like the first game. It could be very similar outcome. I'm going to say a 32-31, and, Oregon barely wins. Okay, last game we have is the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. Notre Dame going up against Georgia of a rematch of 1980, right?
Oh, yeah. Is it?
Wasn't that the championship game? The one that Herschel Walker won as a freshman, right?
Yeah. Was that against Notre Dame?
It was either Notre Dame or Penn State. I can't remember. I think it was Notre Dame. But regardless, let's jump into it. So give me your thoughts, and then I'll go after you.
Yeah. First of all, yeah, you're correct. It was Georgia versus Notre Dame. So this one again for Georgia, we know they're not going to have Carson back, but honestly, let's be real here. It's not that big of a loss because the offense still, the bread and butter is, the running game, how well the tight ends play there. So with the loss of Begg, it's not going to hurt them as much as say another, losing a quarterback would be to another team. Notre Dame still riding high. They had a, good win against Indiana, and they did a great job defensively stopping that attack, that passing attack. I feel like in this one, Georgia, that running game is something that Notre Dame is going to have to find a way to stop because they have so many weapons on the run, and then they can hit you with that play action pass. The big thing will be is how well Notre Dame reacts to that play action pass. If they're biting on those plays and they have guys open 15, 20 yards down the field, this is Georgia's ball game, and they are well within range. For Notre Dame, in order to prevent that, they're going to have to, get Georgia off the field. They're going to have to limit the run or at least force them to throw the ball. And even then, it's not a guarantee. I feel like there's not enough on offense for Notre Dame to come over this like Georgia defense. And I mean, this defense, again, they somehow gave up over 30 in the regulation against Georgia Tech, but was able to hold Texas to what, like 19? So I don't know. It's been a crazy year this year. But if history repeats itself, I feel like Georgia will have this one in hand. Defense finds a way to stop Riley Leonard and that attack of Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's defense just can't get Georgia off the field. They'll just, grind their way to scoring and wear them out in the second half. I'm going to go Bulldogs winning. I'll go with a 27-17 win for Georgia.
What was your final score again? Say it again.
27-17 Bulldogs. Hope I'm wrong.
I don't know. With this Georgia team, like, the defense is not as good as years past. So that's the one thing. And then two, they, with Carson Beck, they were very turnover prone. They're 84th in the country in turnovers or in interceptions. Red zone scoring, they're 10th in the country, which is really good, and scoring overall 31st, so really good. Notre Dame is the second best scoring team in the country. And, when I was looking at the stats, it was like the list that I would go through was the top scoring teams in the country. And the worst team in the entire playoff, I believe, was Georgia as far as scoring. And I think that a lot has to do that with the fact that they played a harder schedule for the first time in years, that they finally have had a really difficult schedule to deal with when they added Ole Miss and Alabama, and they lost to both of those guys. And they played Texas too, so that was a tough one too. But they got lucky in that Texas game because Texas imploded in that first half. And if Texas doesn't implode, Texas may win that game. So, and, Texas was destroying them in the SEC championship game. They just couldn't capitalize on their chances inside the red zone. But Georgia's red zone scoring on defense is not that great. It's 54th. They don't create that many turnovers. Their turnover margin is not very good. It's 61st. It's basically zero. I don't know. I don't like this Georgia team a lot. Notre Dame, fourth best in the country in getting interceptions on defense. I think they can force Gunnar Stockton into some mistakes. He got lucky in that Texas game. They survived. But I don't think that's going to continue. I think this Notre Dame team is better than this Georgia team right now. Like, I think if there was a healthy Carson Beck, I would give them more of a shot. I know he had been more turnover prone, but just because of the fact that he had been experienced would have given them a better chance. I think with Gunnar Stockton, a kid that has not played more than, I think it's 60 snaps all year, his whole career. He hasn't played much at all. So to expect this kid to just jump into a playoff game and to just be, ready to go, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think that Notre Dame's going to win this game. I like Jeremiah Love a lot. I'm looking at his injury update, and I think he's good to go. I know that Notre Dame lost a defensive lineman. I can't remember his name, but he was pretty integral to their defense. But their defense is stout, man. Third best in defensive scoring, 7th and 10th best in third and fourth down conversions on defense, third best in passing defense. But the one thing that they're a little weak on is rushing defense. There's 36. They allow 133 yards a game. So maybe Georgia can get them there. I don't know. I don't think I just don't think Georgia is good enough this year. Like, I know people are like enamored with Georgia in years past, but this is not the same Georgia. Like, there are not a ton of playmakers on this offense outside of maybe ETN. I like the rest of them are good, but not great. And again, if you don't have a guy good enough to be able to get them the ball, then you're lacking there. So I think Notre Dame's defense is good enough to stop Georgia's offense, and I think Notre Dame's offense is adequate enough, and obviously scoring wise they can, and I think they can put numbers on Georgia here. So I'm going to go with Notre Dame winning like a 28-20 game. Yeah. Well, that's it, everyone. That is our preview show of the quarterfinals. I just wanted to say this has been a tremendous 2024. When we got into the beginning of this year, I'm almost positive we were around 100 subscribers. We are now, as of today, over 1,800 subscribers. So I just want to thank all of you, on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, Twitter, on TikTok. Thank you for all of your support. We really do appreciate it. We have, this is a labor of love. We don't make money as of right now on this. So we're trying to get sponsors hopefully into next year to make some money to be able to help make this even better. We do the research, Ian, and I haven't told you this yet, Ian, but I came up with your nickname. I got it for it because your last name's Gibson. So I'm going to go G5 Gibson. G5 guy Gibson. So like
I've been given worse names.
No, but it's perfect because that's
it is.
Because it's like I don't think that other national college football like brands, media, whatever, talk about the G5 the way that we do. And it's the fact that those teams better than anybody. Like you really are the most knowledgeable person. I watch a ton of different college football stuff, and I know you do as well. And like more than any other person that I have seen in any other form of media. And that goes a long way to show that we are well versed in our research and that we really work hard at this stuff. And I hope that you folks out there that are watching this, know that. And we are passionate about this sport. And yes, we do cover, USF and Florida and USC and UCLA, but we are a national show. Like we do cover these national stories and try to cover the big games every week. And I think we do a really good job of that. And, we like on our recaps, like I do like minimum like 5 to 6 hours every Saturday or Sunday before I do the show. And so like, when these recap shows go on, I do a ton of work to be able to watch, 18 to 20 minute condensed games of these games. And, we put in the effort so that you guys can hear our knowledge and get a full understanding of what the sport is. And I've been doing this a long time now. It's been since 2016. And, I love this. I really do. This has been something that I've loved to be able to do each year. And I am extremely grateful that Ian is a part of this as well, because he brings such immense research and knowledge of the sport. Considering Ian's how old are you?
23.
23. And he knows more college football history than like, I'd say 90% of college football fans. And it is, it's a tremendous asset that we have at Hater Radio here. And I just want to thank all of you. Please like, subscribe, comment, follow, do all the things, share on all the formats that we said. Ian, what are your socials before we go?
Yeah, it's at Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. It's at G_Gator_G.
That's the show, everyone. Happy New Year. We'll talk to you on, let me see what the schedule is. I forgot. It's not normally what we've been doing. It's a little bit different. So there'll be a show Thursday. No show Wednesday because there's games on Wednesday. We'll do a show Thursday, probably same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So happy New Year, y'all, and enjoy these games, and we'll talk to you then. Take care.